The stars blinked in the vastness of space, an endless sea of cold darkness, a galaxy torn apart by years of war, and now, in the midst of it all, the fate of countless civilizations hung in the balance. The Carvans, a ruthless empire, had been sweeping across the stars, conquering one world after another. Their advanced technology and fierce determination had left nothing but ashes in their wake. And now, they were at the doorstep of the Valor Alliance, a coalition of oppressed species united by the common goal of survival. The battle between the Xarvans and the Valor Alliance raged on. Ships exploded into fiery clouds of debris as the Alliance's defenses crumbled before the Xarvans' overwhelming power. The Xarvans' warships, massive, heavily armed, and relentless, sliced through the Alliance's fleet with ease. Their plasma cannons and energy shields made the Alliance ships look like toys, helpless against the wrath of an empire that had been conquering planets for centuries. Amid the chaos, the Valor Alliance fought with everything they had left. Their ships, though skilled and well-coordinated, were no match for the Xarvans' technological superiority. The once proud fleet of the Alliance was now a shattered remnant, struggling to stay alive as explosions filled the space around them. Every ship that went down felt like a death sentence for an entire species. The Alliance commander, Raylan, stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching as his people were slaughtered. "Commander, we can't keep up. They're too strong," one of his officers said, his voice full of fear. "The Xarvans have already destroyed half of our fleet." Raylan clenched his fists, his jaw tight. He had seen the desperation in the eyes of his soldiers, the hope beginning to fade. It was only a matter of time before the Xarvans would finish them off. But then, a voice broke through the madness, a voice that was supposed to be a distant dream. "Commander Raylan, we have just received a message from Earth." The officer looked at the screen. His face turned pale. He couldn't believe what he was hearing. Earth, the home planet of humans, a species that had barely made a mark in the galactic community. How could they possibly have anything to offer against the Xarvans? Raylan looked at the screen, his heart racing as the message flickered into view. The words were short, but they hit hard. Earth is willing to join the war, but they want control of the fight. Raylan froze. Control. He could hardly believe what he was reading. The humans, who had only recently discovered the depths of space travel, were offering to help in a war that had already destroyed entire civilizations. And not only were they willing to fight, but they demanded control. The Alliance leaders, who had been gathered in the war room, exchanged skeptical glances. The humans, with all their talk of bravery and determination, were nothing compared to the advanced species they had fought. How could they possibly turn the tide of this war? One of the senior commanders, a tall alien with sharp features, spoke up, his voice full of doubt. "The humans, they barely even have a fleet. How can they stand against the Xarvans? This could be another distraction. We're on the edge of annihilation. Do we really trust them?" Raylan looked at the Council of Commanders, their faces filled with concern. He could see the fear in their eyes, the fear of the unknown. The Xarvans were relentless, their machines and weapons beyond anything the Alliance had ever seen. And now the humans were offering help. But at what cost? Could they really be the answer? The thought of humanity being able to fight the Xarvans seemed absurd. However, there was no time to debate. The Xarvans were closing in. Their fleet was already preparing for a final push, and if they didn't act quickly, the Valor Alliance would be destroyed in days, maybe hours. "We have no choice," Raylan said, his voice grim but resolute. "We must take the chance. Earth may be our only hope. Open the channel. Let's talk to them." The Alliance officers reluctantly agreed. The screen flickered again, and a human face appeared on the screen. His eyes were intense, focused, someone who had seen war. Commander Alex Carter of Earth, the man who had offered the impossible. "Commander Raylan," Alex said, his voice calm but strong. "I know you have doubts, but I'm telling you, Earth will fight. Our fleet is small, but it's powerful, and we'll do whatever it takes to win this war. But we need control. We know how to win, and we'll fight on our terms." The message was blunt, and to many, it sounded arrogant. How could a species that had just begun exploring space demand control? But Raylan could see the fire in Alex's eyes, and for the first time in months, he felt a flicker of hope. "Control? What do you mean by control?" Raylan asked, trying to make sense of this strange offer. Alex leaned forward, speaking with the kind of confidence that only a soldier with nothing to lose could have. "We'll lead the fight. You've been losing for too long. You don't need more ships or soldiers. You need strategy. We'll take the fight to the Xarvans, plan their every move, strike when they least expect it. If we join this war, we'll end it. Fast." Raylan looked at his officers. They were still doubtful, but there was something in Alex's tone that was impossible to ignore. Could they really be the answer? Could humans, who were so young in their exploration of space, have the answer to the most terrifying empire the galaxy had ever known? There was only one way to find out. "All right," Raylan said, his voice steady. "We'll give you the chance. But know this, Commander. If you fail, it will be the end of us all." The message ended, and the room fell silent. Raylan looked out the window, watching as the wreckage of his fleet drifted into space. The Xarvans were already regrouping for their final assault. The fate of countless species rested on the shoulders of humanity, the most unlikely of allies. The hum of the command bridge was deafening as Raylan stared out into the vast expanse of space. For weeks, the Valor Alliance had been fighting a losing battle against the Xarvans, a race of invaders whose technology was light years ahead of anything the Alliance had. The dread of defeat loomed over them like a dark cloud, each passing moment pushing them closer to their inevitable extinction. But now, something was different, something unexpected. The words of Commander Alex Carter echoed in Raylan's mind. "We'll take the fight to the Xarvans, plan their every move, strike when they least expect it. If we join this war, we'll end it. Fast." Earth had arrived, and they weren't coming with just a handful of ships. No, this was far bigger than anyone had imagined. Earth had deployed a fleet of 700,000 warships, and they were not just any ordinary fleet. This was something Xarvans had never seen before. As Raylan watched the battle unfold, he couldn't help but feel a mixture of disbelief and awe. The human ships entered the battlefield in total silence, cloaked in advanced stealth technology that made them nearly invisible to Xarvan sensors. The sheer scale of the fleet was enough to shake the confidence of any enemy-minus 700,000 ships, all invisible, all moving into position. The Xarvans, smug in their arrogance, didn't even notice the incoming threat until it was too late. The Xarvan generals were gathered on their flagship, watching the fight unfold. They laughed at the thought of the human fleet entering the fray. 700,000 ships. "What a joke," one of the generals sneered. "Our fleet is 1,000 times more powerful. Let them try." But then something happened that made them pause. The human fleet decloaked with a sudden flash, and in that instant, the very fabric of the battle was torn apart. The Xarvans' confidence shattered as the human warships revealed their true firepower. The moment their cloaking shields dropped, it was as if the universe itself had opened up. Hundreds of sleek, advanced ships, gleaming, intimidating, and incredibly agile, broke through the vast darkness, emerging from the shadows with terrifying speed. The Xarvans barely had time to react before the first wave of AI-controlled drones was unleashed. These weren't just drones. These were smart, self-aware machines capable of independent thought and devastating precision. They scattered in every direction, swarming the Xarvan ships. With incredible maneuverability, they darted between the Xarvan warships, avoiding incoming fire with ease. One by one, Xarvan ships were overwhelmed, their shields flickering and failing as the drones attacked their weak spots. But it wasn't just the drones. The human fleet was far more than just numbers. As the drones launched their attack, The human warships fired their plasma cannons, lighting up the dark void of space with bursts of intense, searing energy. The plasma beams cut through the carven shields like a hot knife through butter, leaving nothing but destruction in their wake. Railguns, mounted on the human ships, fired massive projectiles at unimaginable speeds, tearing through the carven ships as though they were paper. These were not just normal projectiles. These were projectiles made of hyper-dense material designed to pierce through the toughest armor in the galaxy. With each strike, Sarvan warships were blasted into pieces. Explosions rocked the Sarvan fleet as ship after ship disintegrated under the intense firepower of humanity's advanced weapons. And then, orbital bombardment began. The humans had orbital platforms positioned in orbit around nearby moons and planets, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. And strike they did. From above, giant plasma cannons rained down on the Sarvan fleet, hitting their flagship and their support ships with devastating force. The bombardment was so fierce that it seemed as though the very sky was cracking open above them. Each blast left craters on the surface of the Tarvan ships, and the once formidable fleet began to crumble under the pressure. At first, the Carvans didn't know how to react. Their warships, once considered invincible, began falling apart. The superior technology they had relied on for so long no longer seemed to matter in the face of humanity's shockingly advanced weapons. For a moment, there was silence, a tense pause where the chaos of battle seemed to hold its breath. Then the full weight of what was happening settled in. The Xarvans were losing. Raylan watched in awe as the Xarvan commanders scrambled to regain control of their fleet. The once proud empire was faltering. The massive warships, which had struck terror in the hearts of countless species, were now falling one by one. It didn't matter how many ships the Xarvans had, they simply couldn't stand up to the speed and efficiency of the human fleet. Sarvan warships that had once crushed entire civilizations with ease now found themselves outgunned and outsmarted. The AI drones picked apart their defenses, the plasma beams melted through their hulls, and the orbital bombardment left nothing but scattered wreckage in the cold void of space. It was a sight that no one had expected to see. The Xarvans, the most advanced empire in the galaxy, losing to the humans. Inside the Xarvan flagship, the generals were in chaos. "This cannot be happening," one of them shouted. "How can these humans be so powerful?" Another shook his head in disbelief. "They shouldn't have been able to get past our sensors. Our technology should be superior." But the truth was undeniable. The humans had pulled off the impossible. They had come to the battle cloaked, hidden in the shadows, and when the moment came, they unleashed a fury that no one had anticipated. The Xarvans' confidence had been shattered in an instant, their arrogance brought to its knees. The once imposing fleet, which had crushed everything in its path, was now fighting for survival. They had underestimated humanity, and that mistake would be their undoing. The human ships continued their onslaught, deploying more drones, firing plasma beams and railgun shots, and coordinating orbital bombardments to perfection. The once unstoppable Xarvan ships began to fall apart, one after another. The Xarvans had underestimated the power of Earth, and now they were paying the price. Raylan's voice broke through the silence on the bridge of the human flagship. "Commander Carter, are you seeing this? The Xarvans are falling apart." On the other end of the comms, Commander Alex Carter nodded, his face grim but determined. "This is only the beginning, Commander Raylan. We have to finish this. We cannot let them regroup." As the battle raged on, it became clear. The Xarvans were not prepared for the might of humanity. The war they had thought would be theirs to win was slipping through their fingers, and the once overwhelming force they had commanded was crumbling beneath the human assault. For the first time, the Xarvans were afraid. And so the stage was set. Earth had entered the war, and they were not going to stop until they had crushed the Xarvans completely. The battlefield was quiet now, a deadly calm hanging in the void of space after the first wave of destruction. The Xarvan Empire had underestimated humanity, and the price they paid for that mistake was catastrophic. Yet, even in the face of near-total annihilation, the Xarvans refused to admit defeat. On the Xarvan flagship, Supreme Commander Kale stood at the bridge, his face etched with determination and frustration. His fleet was losing, badly, and Earth's 700,000 warships, with their eye-controlled drones, plasma weapons, and advanced railguns, were tearing through the Xarvan forces with overwhelming efficiency. His warriors, once unchallenged across the galaxy, now found themselves unable to stop the relentless assault from the humans. He knew they couldn't survive much longer unless they acted fast. His eyes narrowed as he turned toward his officer. "Activate the vortex cannon." The officer blinked in disbelief. "Sir, the vortex cannon is our last resort. It's a planet killer. Are you sure?" Cal's gaze was unwavering. "We have no other choice. Earth has humiliated us. We cannot allow them to destroy us." With a heavy heart, the officer relayed the order. The Xarvans were about to unleash their most dangerous weapon, a superlaser capable of destroying entire planets. Its power was unmatched, and for a moment, it seemed as if they might have a chance to turn the tide of battle. Meanwhile, on the human flagship, Commander Raylan and Commander Carter stood together, watching the enemy's movements. They could sense that something was coming, something that might shift the balance back in the Xarvans' favor. Raylan's fingers hovered over the console. "They're preparing something big. We need to act fast." He turned to Carter. "Deploy the AI countermeasures." On the human side, Earth's fleet was ready. While the Xarvans had one last weapon in their arsenal, humanity had anticipated this move. The AI-controlled countermeasures began to deploy, forming a vast web of cloaking fields and shield generators across the human fleet. These fields would absorb the deadly energy of the Xarvan superlaser, rendering it useless. The vortex cannon charge, its deadly light starting to build. The Xarvans believed they had the upper hand. Their weapon, capable of tearing apart entire planets, was aimed directly at Earth. It would have been their final act of vengeance. But just as the superlaser fired, a dazzling light filled the space around the human fleet. Cloaking shields shimmered, wrapping around the human warships like an invisible armor. The beam from the vortex cannon struck the web of shields, and instead of devastating Earth's defenses, the energy was absorbed, neutralized before it could do any damage. The Xarvans watched in disbelief as their weapon failed to make a dent in the human fleet. But the humans weren't done yet. On the human flagship, the order was given: unleash everything. In an instant, every warship in the human fleet opened fire, releasing a concentrated barrage of orbital cannons. These massive, high-powered weapons were designed to take down even the most advanced enemy ships. The beams collided with the Xarvan flagship, and the results were immediate. The Xarvan flagship, once a symbol of invincibility, began to shudder violently. Explosions rocked the ship from within as the orbital cannon blasts tore through its hull. The ship began to break apart, flames bursting from every angle. For a moment, it seemed as though the very core of the flagship had exploded. The fireball that followed was a massive fiery explosion that lit up the entire battlefield. The Xarvans had lost their final bastion of power. Visuals of the human fleet, unleashed in its full might, flooded the battlefield. The once proud Xarvan warships, so sure of their superiority, were now the ones caught in the storm. The plasma blasts from human ships turned the vast emptiness of space into a kaleidoscope of fiery explosions. Xarvan ships burst into flames, their once immaculate designs now shattered beyond recognition. Debris flew through the air, the wreckage of Xarvan fleets scattering across the void. The Xarvans could no longer fight back. Their AI supremacy, their technological edge, none of it mattered anymore. The humans had proven that they could not only match but outsmart them at every turn. The once feared Xarvan Empire was unraveling at an unimaginable speed. On the Xarvan flagship, the commander Kale stared in disbelief as his final gamble fell apart. No, this can't be happening. He watched as the orbital bombardment tore through his ship, the very vessel that had once been the pride of the Xarvan fleet. The explosion engulfed everything, sending shockwaves throughout the battlefield. Within moments, the flagship was nothing more than a burning husk of its former self, its strategic value reduced to nothing. The tide had shifted. The humans were no longer the underdogs. They were victorious, and their enemies, once confident and powerful, were now on the brink of collapse. The Xarvans, who had underestimated humanity from the start, had learned their final lesson too late. Commander Raylan stood at the command center, watching the destruction unfold. "It's over," he muttered, his voice calm but filled with a sense of finality. "We've won." Commander Carter nodded, but there was no joy in his face. This was only the first step. The Xarvans are finished, but the galaxy is still at war. We've shown that Earth isn't to be taken lightly, but now we have to rebuild. We have to make sure no one ever forgets what happened here. And so, with the Xarvan's final attempt to reclaim victory shattered, the human fleet stood victorious. The battle was over, but the war was far from finished. Humanity had sent a clear message to the galaxy. Earth was no longer the weak link. The Xarvans, with their superior technology and their once unassailable dominance, had been humbled. Humans had proven that they were a force to be reckoned with. Their victory, a result of brilliant strategy, advanced technology, and unwavering determination, had changed the course of the war, and possibly the galaxy, forever. As the remnants of the Xarvan fleet drifted into the silence of space, the humans prepared for whatever came next. They had learned from their enemies, adapted, and ultimately triumphed. They had entered the war as outsiders, but they were leaving as the galaxy's new power. The tide had shifted, and now humanity's story would be told across the stars. As the final wave of explosions erupted in space, scattering the remnants of the Xarvan fleet, the mood among Earth's forces was somber yet resolute. The battle for the galaxy had been hard-fought, but the final victory was now within their grasp. Earth had triumphed in the most unexpected way. Within hours, the tide of the war had completely turned. Now, Earth's forces, having proven their dominance in space, began their march across the remaining Xarvan territories. Their objective was clear: finish what had been started and bring an end to the war once and for all. The Xarvans, broken and humiliated, no longer had the strength to resist. Their final line of defense was crumbling under the relentless pressure of human forces. The assault was swift, and the human fleet, which had once been outmatched, now had the upper hand. The Xarvan resistance was scattered, their forces broken in pieces after the devastation they had suffered. Earth's soldiers advanced, capturing one Xarvan stronghold after another with ease. The battle, once thought to be unwinnable for humanity, was drawing to an inevitable close. The final assault on Xarvan-controlled territories came in waves. On the ground, human soldiers pushed forward through hostile terrain, aided by robotic drones and AI-controlled ground forces. Every step was hard-earned, as the Xarvans launched counterattacks, trying desperately to defend their cities. But the humans were relentless. Through the smoke-filled streets of alien cities, soldiers fought side by side with robots, engaging in close-quarters combat with the last of the Xarvan soldiers. The human soldiers carried the weight of their fallen comrades on their shoulders. Every enemy they cut down was a victory for their fallen friends. The memory of Bonner, the brave soldier who had given his life to turn the tide of the battle, was etched into every heart. His sacrifice would not be forgotten. The human army, bolstered by their technological superiority, fought through dense Xarvan cities that had once seemed impenetrable. Robotic drones hacked into the Xarvan's defenses, shutting down their power grids and disabling their weaponry. With the Xarvan defenses weakened, human soldiers surged forward, reclaiming cities one block at a time. The streets, once teeming with the alien forces, now echoed with the sound of human boots on the ground. Plasma rifles and railguns flashed in the darkness as Earth's soldiers pushed their way deeper into enemy territory. Each victory, no matter how small, was a step closer to the ultimate goal: the complete and total surrender of the Xarvan Empire. The Xarvans, who had once been confident in their superiority, were now reduced to fleeing survivors, scrambling to retreat to their last strongholds. The humans had beaten them at their own game. Technology, tactics, and sheer determination had proven to be stronger than the Xarvans' arrogance. The final battle came when the last Xarvan commander stood in the way of Earth's victory. He was a formidable leader, a symbol of Xarvan strength who refused to admit that defeat was inevitable. His troops were exhausted, demoralized, and outnumbered, but he refused to surrender. His defiance was one last act of resistance, the last hope of a collapsing empire. As the final battle erupted around him, the Xarvan commander stood at the head of his soldiers, preparing for the inevitable. His warriors fought valiantly, but they were overwhelmed by the relentless human forces. Robotic drones and human soldiers clashed with the Xarvan forces in a final desperate attempt to hold their ground. In the end, it was over in a flash. The Xarvan commander fell, struck down by a volley of plasma fire. The last of the Xarvan resistance had been shattered. The war, which had seemed so unwinnable for humanity just days before, was now at an end. As the battle cleared, Earth's soldiers stood victorious. But their victory was not without its cost. The memory of their fallen comrades hung heavy in the air. Bonner's sacrifice was honored in a small memorial on the battlefield, where his name would be forever remembered. His death had paved the way for humanity's triumph, and the soldiers knew that they would carry his memory with them into the future. Visuals from the battlefield painted a vivid picture of the final moments of the war. Soldiers moved through the wreckage of the Xarvan cities, their faces determined as they reclaimed the planet. Drones, once enemies, now worked alongside humans to clear the debris and repair the damage. The Xarvans, defeated and humiliated, had no choice but to watch as Earth's forces took control of their once great empire. The scenes were a testament to humanity's perseverance. Despite being vastly outmatched at the start, they had fought with everything they had. The Xarvans had underestimated the human spirit, and that had been their downfall. Earth's forces had emerged victorious, not just because of their technology, but because they had something the Xarvans lacked: unity, resolve, and heart. The final victory was a moment of triumph for Earth. It wasn't just the defeat of an enemy. It was the moment when humanity had truly earned its place in the galaxy. The underdogs had won, and now they were the ones who would shape the future. The Xarvans, who had once believed they were invincible, had been brought to their knees. The universe would never be the same. In the days following the victory, the Xarvan Empire surrendered. Their leaders, now broken and desperate, were taken into custody by the human fleet. The galaxy had been forever changed by this swift and unexpected war, and as humanity celebrated its hard-earned victory, there was a sense of pride that stretched across the stars. They had proven that no matter how powerful the enemy, no matter how bleak the odds, humanity would always fight for its survival. In the heart of the human fleet, the commanders stood together, reflecting on what they had accomplished. The Xarvans were defeated, but the victory was bittersweet. The war had cost many lives, and the scars of battle would remain. But the legacy of humanity's triumph would live on, a shining beacon of hope for the future. As the last remnants of the Xarvan fleet were captured, and their once grand empire fell into ruin, humanity stood tall. Earth had joined the war, and within hours, the galaxy had changed forever. The battlefield was quiet now. The roar of weapons had faded, replaced by the eerie silence of space. Around Earth's warships, the debris from the defeated Xarvan fleet floated like forgotten remnants of a once great empire. Once, the Xarvans had been an unstoppable force, their ships powerful and their artificial intelligence strategies perfect. But now, they were just another defeated foe in the annals of history. Commander Alex Carter, standing on the bridge of the flagship U.S. Valkyrie, gazed out into the endless void of space. He had been through countless battles, but this was different. The stakes had been higher than ever before, the odds insurmountable. Yet here they were, victorious. The Xarvans had been crushed, and their reign of terror had ended. In the stillness of space, Carter's mind wandered. He thought of the soldiers who had sacrificed everything. He thought of Bonner, who had given his life to make sure the human fleet could strike back. The sacrifice of those brave men and women weighed heavily on his heart. War always left scars, and this one would be no different. The humans had faced down an empire, defeated it, and shattered the very system that had once seemed unbeatable. They had done what no one expected, even though the cost was great. Many lives had been lost, and there would be no forgetting those who had fallen. But there was something undeniable in their victory, something that made Earth's forces stand tall in a galaxy that had once thought them insignificant. Carter turned away from the viewport and walked to the communication console. He had a message to deliver, a final message to the galaxy. With the press of a button, his voice boomed over the intercom to every corner of space. "We don't look for wars," he began, his voice calm and measured. "But when we fight, it's over faster than you can blink." The words were simple, but their impact was profound. The Xarvans had learned that lesson the hard way. Their immense power had been no match for the resilience, ingenuity, and relentless spirit of humanity. And now, the galaxy would never forget that truth. The camera zoomed out slowly, showing a long shot of the Earth warships drifting in space. Their sleek, shining forms contrasted sharply with the destroyed Sarvan ships around them. It was a striking visual, a symbol of the human victory over a seemingly unstoppable force. The debris floated like broken promises, the twisted remains of what had once been a proud fleet, now reduced to scrap. The remnants of a destroyed empire told the story of the Xarvan's fall. Space, once filled with the chaos of battle, was eerily quiet now. The once threatening Xarvan forces were gone, their eye-driven ships now nothing more than floating ruins in the vast emptiness. But the quiet didn't bring peace, it brought unease. The reality of what had been accomplished settled in. Humanity had won, but at what cost? Lives had been lost. Friends and comrades had fallen in the pursuit of victory. The weight of it was heavy. The camera panned out, showing Earth's warships surrounded by the destruction. The music swelled, a deep, powerful melody that evoked both sorrow and triumph. It was the sound of victory, but it was also the sound of loss. The AI tyranny that had once seemed so invincible had been destroyed, but the scars of battle would remain. As the screen began to fade to black, the quiet hung in the air like a lingering question. Humanity had triumphed, but the price had been steep. The Xarvans had underestimated Earth's resilience, but their destruction would forever remind the galaxy of the human spirit. The victory wasn't just about defeating an enemy. It was about the strength of will, the willingness to fight for survival, no matter the odds. The theme of good as evil had played out, but the story was far from over. The Xarvans were gone, their empire shattered, but the galaxy was still vast, filled with unknowns. There would be new challenges ahead, new threats that humanity would face. But one thing was certain: Earth had earned its place in the stars. The human spirit, once thought to be weak and fragile, had proven itself stronger than any machine, stronger than any force in the galaxy. The final moments on screen were powerful, leaving the audience with a sense of awe. Humanity had won the war, but the consequences of that victory were far-reaching. The AI systems the Xarvans had trusted were now defeated, but the price of victory was felt by everyone who had fought. The fallen soldiers were honored, their memories living on in the hearts of those who survived. As the camera continued to pull back, the quiet of space seemed to stretch on forever. There was a sense of unease that lingered, an acknowledgement that, though the war had ended, the universe was far from simple. Earth had faced its greatest enemy and come out victorious, but it had done so at great cost. The shadows of the past would never be fully gone. The screen continued to fade, and as it did, the final message echoed in the minds of all who had witnessed the battle. Even the most advanced forces can be overthrown by the human spirit. The words were a reminder of what Earth had accomplished. Against all odds, They had emerged victorious. The human race had fought not just for survival, but for the freedom to determine their own destiny. In the end, it was not technology, not artificial intelligence, but the strength of human will that had carried them through. And as the screen went black, the audience was left with the quiet realization that humanity's potential was limitless. The war may have ended, but the journey was only beginning.